I'm here today because of two reasons. One is to protect children against the idea that they can, in fact, change their gender.
Confusing young children with a gender ideology that may lead to permanent mutilating and altering their bodies.
They teach about being gay and stuff when teachers should only be teaching about math. It's the war that's upon our children.
Groups like Gays Against Groomers will come and go from Redlands based on the cultural zeitgeist of the time. This is not their home. Queer and trans people in Redlands will always be here. This group's goal is to silence trans people by painting them as predators because, frankly, it's the oldest trick in the book and it's worked in the past for silencing other marginalized groups, so why not try it again? My name is Jackie Stewart. I was born and raised in Redlands in the early 2000s and 2010s. Throughout my childhood, I experienced the magic that growing up in a town like Redlands offered and lived a seemingly normal life with 2 married parents and 2 brothers in a house on Chestnut Street. On the outside, my upbringing looked to be nothing short of idyllic. On the inside, however, that was not the case. I knew I was queer and transgender as young as 7 years old, but being in a conservative and religious family and community kept me in the closet for the majority of my adolescence. There were no resources for queer youth at that time or any social awareness that queer youth could even exist in a place like Redlands. I remember the hopelessness I felt as I wondered if there was anyone like me at my school, and the crushing, suffocating weight of living in a body that I felt was wrong for my soul. That hopelessness and weight followed me for the rest of my adolescence and into my adult life, up until last spring, where it became unbearable to ignore any longer, and I was faced with the internal choice to either take my own life or to transition. These came to be the only 2 options. I came out as trans at 24 years old this past April when I started my transition. One of my largest regrets is that I did not get to start my transition earlier in my life, and that I did not have anyone that I could talk to outside of my family that could have been an advocate for me. Told me that I was loved, that I mattered, and most importantly, that I was not wrong for feeling the way I did. If I had access to this kind of support, the trajectory of my life would have been very different. My biggest fear is that Redlands remain a place where queer and trans youth suffer in silence instead of getting the help, care, and support they need and deserve. Groups like Gays Against Groomers threaten the very livelihood and safety of queer and trans youth in Redlands and our nation as a whole, and only stoke fear, panic, and discrimination of and against trans people, and most importantly, transgender youth, who very much do exist and will continue to exist despite this group's hateful agenda. Groups like GAG also make it vastly more difficult for trans people of all ages and identities in the Inland Empire to receive the life-saving, gender-affirming care that they need, and their targeting of transgender youth is not to be mistaken as naive and unassuming. It is a targeted move to further the attempted legislative eradication and social fear-mongering of trans people as a group, starting with trans children and youth. I ask you, Council, to not be fooled and to see this group's words and presence here in our city at this meeting for what it is, a chance to incite fear and sow hatred against queer youth and queer people in Redlands. On Gays Against Groomers' flyer inviting people to attend this meeting tonight, they stated that future generations depend on them to show up and speak out. I would like to take the statement and address it to you, Council, as the future generations of queer and trans youth in Redlands certainly do depend on your decisions and actions for their safety and livelihood in this city. This is their home, and they deserve to say that proudly instead of hiding in the shadows. Thank you.